Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Risks and Rewards of Innovating in Logistics, sponsored by Winmore, the world leader in bid and tender collaboration software for freight forwarders and brokers, and sponsored by I4Transport, better known as EFT, the global leader in business intelligence and C-level networking for transport, logistics, and supply chain. I'm Mark Gamble. I'll serve as your moderator for today, and our event is expected to run around 35 minutes or so. At the end of the presentation, the Winmore team will stay online to answer your questions. You can type your questions by clicking the Q&A button in your audience panel. Any questions that we don't get to for the sake of time will be answered after the event via email. It's our great privilege today to host Sebastiaan Scholte, Chairman of the International Air Cargo Association and CEO of Winmore Logistics. Sebastiaan is the ideal subject matter expert to explore today's topic, and we are honored to have him on the program today. So to map out our agenda, we'll begin with a discussion on the risks and rewards of innovating in logistics. John Globe, Winmore's CMO and founder, will sit down with Sebastiaan for a one-on-one chat. After that, John will dive into several ideas to help you, the logistics professional, start your journey toward innovation. He'll be outlining 4 steps to help ensure your success. And lastly, John will cap off the event with a fascinating case study on GenPro, where he'll detail how they were able to streamline their RFP response process by leveraging Winmore. It's a great showcase of innovation that you can achieve today. We're sure today's program will inform as well as arm you with real advice so that you can innovate within your own organization. Now to today's topic. We've all sort of heard, and it's a commonly held opinion, that logistics is ripe for improvements in operational efficiency, and that the way to get there is through modernization and digitization. But that doesn't necessarily mean you should rush to innovation just for the sake of it. Where do you focus? And how do you thoughtfully usher in innovation to your organization? And more importantly, how do you avoid the pitfalls of rushing in blindly? With that preamble, I'll turn it over to John in the Winmore Europe office to start the discussion with Sebastiaan. Take it away, John.
Good. Well, I just want to take a moment and thank Sebastiaan for joining us here for our discussion today. And maybe as a starting point, Sebastiaan, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, my name is Sebastiaan Scholte. I'm the CEO of Winmore Logistics, but I'm also the chairman of TIACA. I'm at the advisory board of Winmore, but also of CHAMP, a Luxembourg-based software company. And that's about it. I mean, I've been CEO for Winmore for 9 years, and previously I've worked for 2 airlines, Cargolux Airlines and Air Mexico Cargo. And Cargolux Airlines has been, responsible for Latin America, and later on based in Luxembourg, and Air Mexico based in Mexico. So a lot of air cargo experience still.
And a lot of us are familiar with TIACA. But for those who aren't and learning about it for the first time, could you give us a little bit of background on that organization?
Sure. TIACA stands for the International Air Cargo Association, and it's the only association that has it's a non-profit organization, and it covers the whole air cargo supply chain, right? So you have other organizations that maybe focus more on the airlines or the forwarders, etc. We have everybody who has something to do within the air cargo supply chain is welcome and as a member. So we have almost 400 members, ranging from airports, software companies, airlines, forwarders, trucking companies, etc.
And TIACA does quite a bit to create awareness and educate its members. Could you share a few of the highlights of some of the programs and conferences that TIACA runs around the world?
Yeah, sure. What we try to create is awareness. So we have a lot of content, and we distribute that, and it's well written, well read all over the world. What we also do is to attract young people, which is really a challenge for our industry, because the logistics industry is unfortunately not perceived as that being that sexy. Whereas I think, especially if you look at the air cargo industry, it's what you read in today's newspaper, right? It happened maybe in air cargo already yesterday. So it's all the global political, geopolitical developments you see, transmitted in the air cargo industry. So I think it's very dynamic. It's global. It's beautiful. So it should attract a lot of young people. And what we have done, for example, we have certain initiatives. We have training. So for have young people. The young potentials in certain companies that we provide training to on site, and sometimes from different backgrounds, and to educate them a little bit about the air cargo industry. But what we also tried is, well, like a mini internship. So we had a couple of sessions where we had in certain locations we had a forwarder shipper, an airline, and a handling agent, and they were, you know, I had 1 week, and we had young individuals, and they could from each company, and they had to host the others in their company every day, so they could learn what is happening in the air cargo supply chain, right? So from each other, and they had to come up later on with, you know, how do we interact with each other, and how can we improve that? Because we're thinking too much in silos in this industry, and so we're sub-optimizing ourselves, and therefore we're not optimizing the whole air cargo supply chain. And why is this? Because, you know, we're a little bit in the blame game. We have SLAs and we have contractual relationships with certain parties, but then we interact with other parties that we don't have contractual relationships with. And therefore, you know, if something goes wrong, we say, no, it's them, it's not us, etc. And everybody does that. And actually, I think you should be rewarded for doing a mistake, because the sooner you know down in the supply chain, right, you know that something goes wrong, and somebody else can at least adjust it, and then the whole air cargo supply chain or the supply chain is improved. So we're trying to do that, and to do that, of course, technology is very important, and visibility. So in transparency, you have to be completely transparent. The earlier you can share data in a digital way, the better it is, I think.
I love the discussion around the mini internships. That's really interesting, right? When you think about that way of exposing. Can you share a little bit more detail? What type of functions of workers usually participate in those when you think about that, structuring those programs?
Yeah, what we did, for example, in the Netherlands, we had a program like that, and we had somebody from KLM, from Forwarder. Jan de Rijk was also participating, handling agent, and yeah, the people who participated were between 25 and 35 years old, you know, growing within the company with a lot of potential. And the reason why we started this is actually, for example, Jan de Rijk Logistics, we are almost 1,500 people, but and we can have like a career program for certain young individuals, but we're not like a huge Philips, right? Where you can, you know, you have a whole set program, but we actually, and what I actually would like to achieve in the future is that you say, you know what, why don't we extend this not only for a day, but you could even extend it amongst certain other parties in the supply chain and say, okay, we do an internship, and then you, not with a competitor, but with other people in the vertical supply chain, right? So you work there for 3 months, and then you interchange, so you can have a better understanding of the industry. And later on, when you work, right, with these young people, they understood each other a lot better, right? So and they grow within their company, and later on they have to interact more. So it's also the networking. It's also, you know, knowing the face behind, and not, like I said, not working in silos.
Do you see it also as a way of retaining employees? I would imagine too.
Yeah, sure, because you offer something that other companies don't, and what young people want, they wanna learn, and they should, right? And it should not only be their own company. I think you should mentor them. You should, and that means not only within your own company, but also within the industry.
And young people today use technology in ways we can't even imagine, right? When we think about how adolescents now with a smartphone allows connections and content in ways that, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or even longer were only the material of science fiction. Are there ways in which companies in the industry today should think about technology as a way of attracting younger workers too, recognizing that difference in how young people use smartphones and tablets and other ways?
Yeah, I think, but not only on the employees, also your customers. I think, you know, what we're used to as a consumer, I think it should be also reflected in the business. I mean, a lot of things are done on the phone nowadays, right? So I think also business applications should be much more on the phone. I'm actually myself working more on my phone than behind a laptop, right? So I think, the technology is important. Not only the use of technology, but also letting young people apply their knowledge in technology, because logistics is a little bit the traditional industry, and what we are trying to do as well as Jan de Rijk, and I think within 5 years we're becoming more a technology company than just an asset-heavy provider, right? So and that's I think in two ways. One is in the interaction with your customers. it should be much more digitized. It should be much more easy to do business. And if you have that, and the customer gets used to the, to the ease of doing business with you, and also not only the ease of doing business, where they save cost and have a good quality and it's fast and efficient, but also the data. If you can provide customers with certain data in a very interactive, user-friendly way, you have a competitive advantage. And once you have that, you might even create a lock-in, right, with your customer to say, you know what, I like the platform of this certain logistics company so much that I don't want to change, because normally we're a commoditized industry, so we're quite easily interchangeable, right? Especially based on price. But that's why you should differentiate you from that. That's one. Secondly, so with the customer, secondly, it's the whole digitization that makes your processes a lot more efficient. I mean, we're in our company, we're experimenting with robotics, artificial intelligence, our planning systems. A Thursday in November is not the same as a Thursday in February. Thursday in November is not the same on a Monday. If it's certain weather conditions, if there's certain other conditions, if you all have this in big data, you can actually do your day-to-day job a lot better and automate it.
And when you think about the software, these AI applications that recognize the unique opportunity with that data, one of the areas I think a lot of logistics leaders struggle with is they see that opportunity of that technology, but in some cases the business case isn't quite black and white, right? They can't say with a high level of confidence, if we spend this amount of money on this AI software, here's the return that we'll get, right? Are there ways that you think about that from your experience to create that sort of culture of innovation? I mean, Google's one thing. They have a business that prints money, right? They can tell their employees to do whatever they want on the side one day a week or what have you, but logistics, it's a little different. Are there ideas or concepts or frameworks that you've used to look at innovation or encourage logistics companies to evaluate some of this new technology where that business case might not be that clear?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point, because the logistics industry, I think the margins are so thin and the investments are so heavy that you have to be on top of it day to day, right? And unfortunately, you don't have A, a lot of time, B, a lot of money just to see, okay, let's experiment with certain things and let's see how it works out. While you actually should do that, right? I mean, it would be nice if the margins would be a little bit thicker, and then you could say, you know what, I'm going to dedicate certain resources and money and time to just develop things and see how it works. And then, like a startup company, right? And we're also at Jan de Rijk. We went with an outside consultant to do a certain startup. We want to, become more a digital platform. And then the mentality is a lot different than just saying, okay, well, who, what, when, and the business plan, and etc. It's just first make it work, testing it, talk to your customers, and then later on the business case comes, right? And we have to have that mind shift, because we always think the other way around. First test, we need to know when the return is, and then we're gonna say yes or no to it, right? And I think that's the big difference. Having said that, there's also clear business cases, at least in our company, to go digital, and because you become a lot more efficient and productive.
And so tell me more. This was interesting. You talked about bringing in a consultant to run the startup workshop within the company. Was there much resistance to that, or did the team embrace that? And how did you structure that program?
Well, I knew this company before. I've talked to them, and it's actually took. I don't know if I can say the name here. I say No Leaps, and it's a startup bootcamp. That one is focusing on really startups. Anything, startup, but we're not a startup. And the other one is more focusing on big companies that want to, create a startup, but think too much in the mentality of a big company, right? And with this company, we had a 2-week session with all the key stakeholders. And what really surprised me is, because I still have a vision on where we should be with this product and where we should go. And I've talked so many times with these key stakeholders, and I really thought that everybody was on the same page, right? And not after a week, it took a week with these people that everybody was really on the same page. And this is something that surprised me, because even though you think that everybody thinks like you, it's not always true. So that was an eye opener. And the other thing is just, they really helped us making the first steps, right? So where should we, how should we start? And we needed a couple of points to hang on to, and then say, okay, these are the milestones, and this is what we have to achieve. And it's a little bit the old-fashioned business plan, but you need some kind of a framework, kind of a structure, and that's what they provided for us, but in a different way than we would normally have structured it.
What was the team supportive? How did it go over when you started it?
No, very. I mean, I think from the beginning, nobody was against the idea. Everybody was agreeing and saying, okay, we become more and more digital, and we need to do something with this as well. And we have something in hand as well as Jan de Rijk. We have a very advanced planning software that we can use as a platform, right? Like a control tower, actually. And they're all convinced of it. So we had operational people there, we had IT business, we had commercial people, and they were all at the end. They were all, at the same page, and that was very good, and they were very convinced about it.
It became part of it. Sounds like the organization's plans then to execute.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, coming out of this.
So we want to put it also completely separate and as an independent company, and we have also. You have to, if you really believe in something that is going to be the future, you have to dedicate also one of your best resources to it. And then people say, yeah, but they're a little bit afraid because I have a very cozy and a good job right now, and it's stable, and I know where I am. But with this, I don't know. I said, listen, put your money where your mouth is. But if you believe in it, then take a risk, and go for it. I mean, if you doubt, then don't do it, because then you will never make it happen either, right?
Right. Yeah, very good point. And did you find a talent was willing to raise their hand?
Yeah. So we're going to go for it, and that's nice. And so we're going to test with certain customers, and then develop the product, because we have something in. We have that, like a very nice engine, I think, but we still have to build the car around it a little bit, and that's what we need to do. And so we need to do that in the next couple of months, really make our value proposition and also our pricing model, which we have to think like a like a software company. So how would you price this? Do you do this per order or per lump sum, or there's many ways. So
it takes a real different lens to look at it, bringing that to market. Yeah. And then operationally, managing a team and compensating a team for a more traditional logistics business may be different than the incentives and compensation for these sort of innovative business areas too. Are there ways you've thought about that in terms of retention and motivation, given that the people who gravitate for that high risk startup within the larger company might be motivated by different things?
Yeah, we've thought about it. In that sense, we're still a traditional company. But that's part of the journey that we still have to go and see, how we structure this. But I think it's difficult, especially from our company, to give, like stock options or because it's a family-owned company. But but certainly there should be incentives based on the growth and the results for the future. Yeah.
Very exciting. Yeah. Well, now maybe to close out, we so much appreciate you sharing part of the journey. Certainly, there's a lot to look forward to with TIACA coming up with a big conference in Hungary, scheduled for November. Yeah. We've heard a lot about the routes between Hungary and China becoming more important as well. Do you want to maybe share a little bit about what to expect for your upcoming conference in November?
Well, first of all, our conference is a global conference, which happens to be then in Budapest, and Budapest very fortunately is willing to sponsor this as well, the airport. The airport is a very important, I think it's important to the region, the airport. It's developed, and like you say, between the East and the Far East and also Eastern Europe, I think it's really a good distribution center. And we're focusing on a lot of themes, also on training, also on our product, in, for example, CSQ, which is the cargo service quality, where we evaluate the quality of certain airport areas on handling by the forwarders, etc. So we have like a kind of a trip advisor. That's the ultimate goal, so that people really see, okay, how good is it performing, and then also, if it's underperforming, maybe how can you then, bridge the gaps to make it better. So we're going to be focusing on that, and there's going to be a lot of interesting content, especially the content is going to be very, very good. And of course, the networking, like always.
Good. Well, we look forward to it. And in the meantime, a big thank you for joining us today and sharing some background around creating a culture of innovation in the logistics industry.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks to John and Sebastian. We're going to now kick it into the next part of our program. John's going to talk about 4 steps for success, where you can get started in your own organization to innovate. So, John, we'll kick it over to you to take this this slide. And if you're on mute, John.
Yep, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And again, thanks again, Sebastian. I didn't have a chance to mention, to your point, Sebastian, there's a ton of valuable resources at tiaka.org for anyone interested in learning firsthand about some of the training programs available through that terrific organization. So again, Mark, thank you. What I wanted to do is to really shift our focus away from some great points that Sebastian brought up and talk about what does that mean for us in the industry operationally. Where do you start when you recognize the importance of innovating? You're aware of the risks, the concerns that Sebastian brought up around building an ROI, and more importantly, showing some early value and some real strong promise for some innovative ways of doing things differently. So we did a straw poll with some of our advisors and some of our customers, and I'd like to walk you through some key points here. There were actually several steps for success on where to begin. And it really starts, number one, with identifying an internal process. Usually that's usually slow, for example, that's important, that lacks top-down visibility. We had one particular logistics customer that we spoke with, and we said, where do you begin in finding that process? And he made a very flippant comment that I thought was actually very noteworthy. He said, we look for the largest email with the most people and the largest Excel spreadsheet associated with that email as an indication of usually a process that could be a attractive candidate for doing things differently. And that could be a process improvement, a technology improvement, or simply a different way in which analytics and insight are used to speed that decision making. We look for some key questions, right? When this process is identified, does everyone understand what's expected of them at each point in the activity or in the workflow? That lack of ambiguity is often a sign that individuals, if they understand what happens before them or after them, can often be used to make a higher quality input or a higher quality decision. So look for those indications of a process that maybe is a little ambivalent or a little bit murky. And then find a solution, right? Usually through some of these incredibly exciting new cloud services with a low cost of entry, low cost of trial, as we say. Brad Jacobs at XVO Logistics, for example, talks about not only the importance of return on capital, but also return on time. So finding some of the innovation that's out there, whether it's the iTunes Store, word of mouth, services like tiaka.org and others, are often great places to look for examples of technology where logistics or forwarders or brokers or carriers are doing things a little bit differently. What we also encourage customers to do is to look for technology partners that are willing to work with you. For example, do they have custom-built case studies that can be accessed and used to help build that business case so you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel time and time again? And then finally, we can underscore the importance of being able to work with vendors and partners that understand the nuances of this industry. The good news is there's a wide range of innovation that's happening in this space. The bad news is it can often be a little bit misleading and a little confusing at times. So keep that in mind, that there's no substitute for companies that understand the complexities and challenges underway and opportunities that face the variety of different stakeholders in providing logistics services today. So these are some principles to keep in mind as you think about the points that Sebastian brought up around innovating and looking for ways to do things differently that really surface top of mind. And I'd like to give you an example of one particular transportation company, GenPro Transportation, based in Rutherford, New Jersey, that applied a lot of these principles to candidly do things a little bit differently within their own organization. GenPro focuses on the agricultural transportation routes out of the Northeast United States. A freight brokerage firm that candidly was having some issues with onboarding and managing some of their carrier relationships. The RFPs, of course, were driving about 45% of their business in terms of revenue and volume, and the commercial process was candidly a little bit difficult to follow. Right, commercial leaders were concern that they didn't have much visibility and understanding which RFPs were in the process of being responded to, which carriers were the ones that were most capable of responding, and the history and exceptions of each of those carriers was a real point of confusion. And unfortunately, the TMS software that they were using wasn't able to handle that as well as they had hoped. And so the team was basically relying on Excel and email as a way of managing the responses back from carriers and compiling those for each shipper, which turned out to be, a much more time-consuming and lengthy process than it needed to be. And unfortunately, the IT group was just stretched way too thin. They had their hands full with the TMS, and of course, there were a number of different reporting initiatives on their desks. So they were really in a tough spot to help manage the commercial areas. So fortunately, the commercial teams basically got together and looked for ways in which they could, apply their own external software and do their own searches without including IT. And with IT's eventual blessing, we're able to move forward with bringing on board actually our software to manage that RFP process, which has gone incredibly well, along with helping address and optimize a lot of their carrier relationships. So a really exciting example, and you can see that here firsthand in the slides, right? They moved from using Excel to our Winmore bid and collaboration software. It was a 30-day cycle because they were able to use an out-of-the-box app that provided value from day one. The templates that we provided were very powerful, that spoke the language of the industry, which was very important for them. And we were also able to come up with volume-based pricing. So there was a very nominal fee to get started, and the volume of the success of the product was correlated then with the pricing. So we're able to work with their commercial terms that they needed in order to be successful. The good news is we're able to get the software live without involving a great deal of resources from IT outside governance and security, which is super important. And we're able to start small with some quick success and paint the way for a 12x return in the first year. So a great example of where a commercial leader, not unlike Sebastiaan with his points around creating a startup-like environment, was able to learn from the industry and drive some real meaningful and measurable change within their business. So a great example of companies that really are in the forefront of innovating and exactly how they've been able to accomplish that together here. So again, our goal is to share with you some takeaways that apply Sebastiaan's insight and hopefully give us some real meaningful ways to think about changing our activities and improving our own processes to provide that Silicon Valley startup environment, whether your company has 50 employees or 50,000. So again, Mark, thank you so much for having us today. It's really a pleasure to be here and to have a chance to share some of the insight from the field with you and the community at i4Transport.
Great, thanks, John. Thanks so much. And I see we're at the half hour. We'll take a couple of questions, and any questions that come in or that we don't get to, of course, we'll answer after the fact via email. But I would actually like to address a couple that have come in here. Tim asks, and I wonder what your thoughts might be on this, John. What role will artificial intelligence play in 3PL innovation? Will it be for customer engagement, for back office operations, or other? Any thoughts there, AI for innovation?
Yes, it's a really good point. I mean, there's just so much hype cycles around AI. In many ways, it reminds me a lot of the hype that we saw earlier around blockchain, say 3 or 4 years ago, which is exciting. I mean, artificial intelligence at the end of the day is software that helps individuals and teams make better decisions faster, right? That's really what you can think about for the definition of AI. And I think we're going to see examples of that, certainly in different areas. But what gets, I think, most of us excited here is really rather where that insight and where that AI-driven analysis can end up, right? And so if you think about the way we often think about data, for example, which is very inward thinking, we have data that we use off our TMS or our CRM or pricing data, for example, or our own level of insight, and we're going to use that to make our own decisions about the services we offer and the types of customers we engage with. And certainly that's sort of the first dimension of using data, but think about how much more interesting it gets when you can run that level of AI insight, but more importantly, turn that over to your customers so that really in a partnership, you can apply that AI and do some interesting observations where your own customers, for example, are taking the data from your TMS and applying that with their own insight, their own optimization to come up with their own observations and a true collaborative relationship. Of course, that has a long way to go in the industry, but I think it is something to think about, where that insight not only can be used from within the company, but more importantly in partnership with customers to unlock some insight. And that may include data that's often held within each shipper. So I think that's an area that certainly gets us very excited. We also think there's a lot of room for what you often hear referred to as robotic process automation, or RPA. And certainly that's an element of what we're doing, albeit in a very granular level in the bid and tender process, which again, I think most of us can agree is a very manual, Excel-driven process that's ripe for innovation, both in terms of speed of accuracy, but also in terms of overall metrics of increasing the tender win rates, which is something we all want to accomplish.
Indeed, great answer. Thanks for the thoughtful comments. And in fact, you mentioned data, and that actually ties into our next question from Ramesh, who asks, how important is it to curate and integrate data as part of a digital initiative?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Ramesh, around integrating data, right? And it's really hard if we think about when, certainly when I started my career a number of years ago, we used to have this fear of a massive data warehouse that would take 6 months to spin up, another 6 months to integrate, millions of dollars in order to bring live, so to speak, right? Amazon Web Services has changed that fundamentally. They now have data warehousing services that they can activate literally the same day or in a matter of a very short period of time, that provides that via. So it's an area that we feel very strongly about, certainly, and I think has now been much simpler to accomplish than ever before. And you can talk about flat file integration, which is effectively running an export and an import, almost like what you do out of Excel. And most of the major software systems have those built-in capabilities. So setting up an old data warehouse through Amazon Web Services and running imports and exports is a project that can be done in a matter of weeks now, and not months, right? So certainly on our side, with our experience, the more data touch points we can bring together from the tender process, usually bringing in TMS or CRM, it's certainly an option, but it doesn't necessarily require being able to do that, right? We find that the bid and tender process is often very manual today, and certainly it's exciting to integrate with CRMs and TMS, but not necessary. And exciting for the companies that are mature enough that are ready to move in that direction, because certainly, as they say, data is the new oil in logistics, right?
Excellent. Thanks for the answer, John. And I see that we're at 35 minutes past the hour, so we're going to meet our commitment and wrap up now, get everyone back to their busy day. We'd like to invite everyone to visit winmore.app for more information, videos, articles, and case studies as well. You can learn about a little bit more about GenPro, but also other Winmore customers and how they've been leveraging Winmore for innovation in their organization. So with that, and from myself, John, and Patty at EFT, our thanks to Sebastiaan Scholte, and our thanks to you for attending. Thank you for your time today, and we'll now sign off and wish everyone a good day. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Mark.